Welcome to another Railroads online video. Today I'm here to give you guys an update on the list. This is a list of critical bug fixes, necessary polishing and stuff like that I think should have been done before the 1.0 version came out, before we can call this a finished product by any means. And in the end, it's still all my opinion, but I think I nailed it down to the more essential items. So it's not gonna be, I would love to see this kind of engine in the game at some point. No, this is things that I think should definitely be taken care of in order to make this game feel more finished and more complete. I want to give you guys the update on this now that we have the 1.0 version. Spoiler, it's gonna fall short in many ways, but overall, well, there have been a few things that have been addressed, and I'm happy to take them off the list because I would like this list to become more compact over time. I'm also working with an outdated version of this list because I'm back on my old PC with a new one being broken again, so this also means that I cannot really test a lot of things that I would have liked to. But let's get right into it and see how it all came together or where it falls apart. We are going to start with trains and simulation, and then go down the list and further into different categories later. Starting by fixing random derailing over switches, truss bridges and crossings. 90-degree crossings have been addressed a while ago. This update should have fixed the 45-degree crossings as well, which, if you watch my series on the game, have been a major problem for me in the past, have gotten worse with the last update. From what I heard, they are still a problem, so I am not going to cross this off the list yet. I would need to do more testing myself on this in order to confirm or deny, so I'm not really sure about the whole thing. But having it on Reddit already a few days after the update came out, yeah, it's not looking like they really fixed it. Next one, fixing the brakes. There have been a lot of issues with them, like completely locking up every time you just get a few percent of brake pressure applied. Right now it still seems to be in a bit of a weird place. First up, engines right now have a problem where they feel like they are applying the brakes already, just by running them, and it's really inconsistent. But on top of that, if you have your brakes applied up to below 85%, you're gonna experience very soft braking and the cars, and even if you just have the engine on its own, it's sometimes gonna take a long time to get to a stop. But if you go a few percent beyond 85%, you're just gonna see that it's really drastically different, and the brake pressure all of a sudden really gets your train to stop much faster than you want to. And sometimes that can lead to issues where, yeah, it will throw off some cars off the track because they just run into your engine and you're braking much harsher than you were meaning to. That still doesn't seem to be fixed, and therefore I sadly cannot take it off the list. One thing in terms of simulation that I would like to see re-added to the game is Wheelslip. We have sanders in every single engine. If I go up here, I think there's one in here. So this is a sand dome. I think the back one here, that's also a sand dome. And every single engine has sanders. They are functional, but Wheelslip has been removed about, I don't know, 1.5 years ago, 2 years, something like that. And since then, you're always gonna get traction, and therefore sand is really completely useless. And I wish they would just put it back in and make it work. But yeah, right now, you always get full traction. So that's weird. A reworked loco collision for player, functioning stepladders and that kind of stuff. So that means, I mean, you're always gonna have to be able to pass through some of the things here, like the roof and that kind of stuff. Otherwise, the game will be completely unusable because you cannot navigate your trains anymore. So it needs to be somewhat unrealistic, but there are a lot of instances where it's just completely inconsistent, and I don't know if I should just be able to walk through the entire bunker of my Heisler over here. Same with a lot of other engines. In some cases, the coal pile actually has collisions. In other cases, like with, I think, the Lima. Yeah, the bunker has collisions, but the coal itself doesn't. So, yeah, I'm now one with my fuel. Hello there. So that needs to be more consistent, and also a lot of tenders and engines have step ladders like over here, but some of them are so non-functional that it's actually very tough to get into the engine. I mean, this one here, the Cook Mogul coal burner, it's just not letting me in here. I can climb on the back on the front of the next engine and then climb over and in, but it should be more consistent, and there should be a step up function here, just to make it a bit easier. So yeah, a lot of stuff like this that allows us to navigate the engines in a more consistent way. But yeah, once again, I'm not asking to close off everything that should not allow the player to pass through, because then that would be a whole nother issue. Remove random link breaking from new gondolas. That has been an issue quite a while ago, but I've actually watched a few live streams from people doing this kind of stuff, working with the high side gondola. And I'm going to take this off the list now, because I had this happen a lot of times very consistently, just, I don't know, 2-3 times per run. And it's not a problem anymore, so that seems to be fixed. And again, I'm always happy to take off some items. Next thing, proper Steam cutoff sim, because the current one is absolute dog shit, let's be honest about that. Engines don't magically run faster if you pull back the reverser. The difference is, in real life, you have only a certain amount of steam built up in your engine. It's called the steam chest. So there's a certain capacity. And running at high speeds, meaning that you are going to use up more of that steam, and eventually your firebox will not be able to keep up with the amount of steam that you are exhausting out the smokestack. So it's important to pull back the lever in order to keep your steam capacity and keep the pressure up. Otherwise, you're just literally gonna run out of steam at some point. But you can reach the top speed with the full reverser. You're just not going to be able to keep it in the long run. And the few more items that would need to be simulated in order to make that work, I don't get why they haven't done it. Yes, they would need to dial it in for every single engine. Maybe they can bunch up a few of them, but this should really be taken care of and made work how it is in real life. Also, option to turn it off. At the very least, with how things are working out here, we should be getting that. Next one, make the small cars more stable, so all the Greg sugarcane cars, they are a nightmare to work with. Basically, if you have a long train with them, or you put them into the middle of another train, if you apply any kind of attractive effort at all, make them pull a little bit, they are just gonna jump off the track. I don't know if this has been taken care of. They seem to have been doing some things, but yeah, these things, I've been avoiding them like the plague unless I absolutely have to use them, or if I'm using them in a very limited sense, like 1 or 2 of them at the end of the train where they cannot really do much damage and hopefully will just stay on the track and tag along. But these things are garbage, and they have been for a long time. Next one, reduce the twitching when running trains, especially in multiplayer, because instead of when you are running a train, it running smoothly at a constant speed, it feels like it's just skipping ahead a little bit when your player keeps up with it, and then it just gonna be yeah, it's not smooth. It goes in very weird little steps, and it feels awful. It makes it hard to hit the lever that you want to, if you want to, for example, hit the brakes in order to keep yourself from derailing or something. It's just not great. And it can cause a lot of issues because, well, your controls are completely messed up at that point. Hard to do anything reliably with that going on. Next up, the game needs to consistently and correctly identify what the player is looking at. This has to do with highlighting, especially inside the engines. So if I look at the regulator, I want the regulator. If I look at the reverser, I don't want to hit the brake here. This is a thing that would need to be taken care of with every single item. So every single car, every single engine. It's a lot of work, but in order to make the first-person experience in this game work consistently, it needs to be taken care of. But yeah, we didn't get any of that at this point. I think we've done something for this in terms of the couplers, so they should be easier to handle now. They have been almost impossible to deal with in some cases with the last update. So I'm glad that they are doing something for that. Next one is close the gaps between cars to prevent getting stuck between them. So if you have multiple cars at the point where you have your coupler, there's always going to be a gap and you can fall in there with your character. And at that point you are kind of trapped under the car and it's really tough to get out of. And yeah, just having an invisible hitbox for the player to walk on would get rid of this problem and make it much easier to navigate this stuff. Especially when you are glitched below the cars and stuck beneath them. Not being able to get out of that situation quickly, it's annoying. Next thing is something that has been likely a problem for the longest time, but I've only realized now that we actually see how much capacity we have in our tenders, and I'm of course going to the one engine that doesn't let me get in there. So the thing is, the fuel consumption. What's really happening is that on higher fuel consumption setting, you're taking out more units of coal per shovel. So in this case, I have it on high, I take out 60 units of coal. And if I then try to put it back in, it's always only going to put in one single item. So this is very wasteful what I'm doing right now. And really, the shovel should be putting back in the same amount that it takes out. This would also allow us to resupply an engine with another one. For example, if my Ferris and Cliffhouse engine over there runs out of fuel, which I think it is at 0 right now, I could come by with my Lima over here and then just take a few shovels from here, put it into the other engine, and it should be able to go again. Doesn't really work if I'm taking out 60 units of coal, putting one into the other engine, and then I'm just losing the rest. So yeah, this needs to be taken care of, and it's something that has been a problem, but I've only realized it now because the numbers make it easier to see what's really going on here. But yeah, that's all in terms of trains and simulation. Now let's go and talk about the presentation. First item on this list is rescaling buildings to have the same scale as Mr. Railroadsen himself. I present to you the cattle farm. Makes me look like a child over here. And yeah, it's the same case with a lot of the prop buildings. Like if I were to take out something from over here, let's go to the gunsmith. I'm pretty sure that's not gonna be up to scale either. It's not quite as bad as with that building, but this one is also a bit weird, and if we take out another few and put them side by side, we are going to see that they are all kinda different. I think the Undertaker might be another good example here. Oh yeah, I think, okay, this is a bit more up to scale. Or does it just look better because, no, this is definitely not up to scale. It just looks a bit different because, yeah, the frame texture is a bit different, but yeah. These wheels are definitely not the size that they should be, and this should have been taken care of ages ago. Can't be that hard. I know they bought these from an asset store, but at least make them fit into your game, please. Next one, add proper unloading animations. Because right now, for the longest time, and it's still the case to this day, items from our cars just spawn next to the car mid-air and then drop onto the platform or onto the dirt, whatever. And I think they should just do this a bit better, more nice looking and that kind of thing. They added the whole hose thing to the water cars and the stuff still just falls into the basin like that. It looks especially awful with cows because they just would be breaking their ankles falling down onto the platform. I know that Century of Steam basically just lets the cargo fade out of existence, and that already looks a bit better. I would still like more detailed unloading animations. I like that kind of stuff for the sawmill, for example, where everything drops onto the ramp and then rolls down. But it needs to look better, it needs to work more consistently and that kind of thing. There's a whole nother issue where sometimes the stuff doesn't just go where you want it to, like loading barrels onto the bulkhead cars. But yeah, that's the basic point about this. Next one, replace the floating, glowing textured industries and facilities. I mean, it's all over the place. And the very least they could do is choose a more fitting a font for the text and put a wall behind it so that it looks like it's text written on a sign instead of just floating freely in the air. There are a few cool things they could do to make the counters work, like having a flip over counter thing where it's basically, yeah, just signs with the numbers and you flip them over to get the next higher number. That kind of thing could be nicely animated, but at the very least, get rid of the floating stuff. And ideally, I would also get rid of the light effect because that just looks awful at night. Could just be regular text and then put a lantern in front of it so it's lit up at night. It really, really looks awful at night. I cannot overstate how much I hate it. You can also see it from a mile away, which doesn't really help. Next one, replace the low resolution textures. And while I cannot talk too much about it because I'm on my old PC and everything is turned down to a minimum, I mean, for the Roundhouse, which is a rather recent addition, this track looks nothing like the stuff that we can place ourselves. And it doesn't look better on my new PC either, so yeah. Stuff like this should have a consistent texture for both the track and the tires and not this garbage all over the place stuff. Also, the texture on the banking here looks worse than what we have over here. So maybe have all of that be more consistent. Same with wood textures and all other stuff. But yeah, that's a lot of examples I could get into. So next one, proper LODs. So this is distance scaling, level of detail. It has a lot of things to do with, for example, right here, if you look at the track below the engine, if I go a bit further back, the tires disappear, and it's just a weird popping effect once they come back into view. It's the same on my new PC and also especially with Slaughterhouse in the distance, where if I go a bit further away, you are going to see the entire thing disappear. And any moment now, now it's gone. Especially awful on the new map because that's wide and open and you will just see it pop in and out of existence at a distance. So yeah, that needs to be better, that needs to be taken care of. And it has a lot of similar issues with different cars, engines, that kind of deal, all across the board really. Anyways, enough about that, let's talk about content. Because while I think most of the stuff here is really just bugs and all of that, there are a few things regarding content that should have been taken care of as well. First up, passenger transport. Since October last year, we got a passenger car that doesn't have any functionality apart from being hooked onto a train and then just being taken around the map for funsies. Not amazing. And passenger transport has been promised ever since that came to the game, but we don't have it yet, and yeah, should be added by now. Different passenger transport, like bringing workers to the different industries, and also some options to build our own train stations and that kind of stuff. Next one, more switches, crossovers, etc., especially for playing with double track. So double tracking means that you have two tracks right next to each other, one for each direction. So on this one you would be going this way from this one would be coming from the other direction towards the camera here. And the switches don't really work with this. First up, we would need one crossing that just basically does this angle if we go off from one switch from one side and we want to cross over the other side. Another crossing would be in the middle here once we have two switches that are having tracks cross each other in the middle. There could also be a switch type that has an angle like this and we can choose between going straight across or going off to the other side here. Stuff like that. Real basic things, and also really I would just like to have a consistent set of switches and crossings, because right now it feels like they are completely separate from each other. They don't work well with each other at all. Like there's no angle for the switches that works with any of the crossings that we have in the game, because they are only 45 and 90 degree. But nothing like this over here. Should be taken care of. Maybe also a few switches that go off at other angles, but that would be more optional. But I think the stuff that I talked about regarding double tracking is pretty much essential and should have been added at some point. The last one for content, I mean, I wasn't really meaning to make this a long section, and this has kind of been addressed, at least to a very basic degree. Lamp props. Functional props to light up the yard at night, because it can get very dark, especially if you have weather effects active as well. Can get pitch black, so having a few lanterns around the place, really nice. And yeah, they added a light effect to the lantern that has been in the game for the longest time. But really there should be other lanterns like lamp posts and things like that, maybe street lights kind of deal. And they should also be off at daytime and on at night. We already have that with some of the passenger cars, and I think also the postal cars. They have lights that only turn on at night, and I don't get why we didn't get the option for this one. It's just on all the time, and that's just cheap. So yeah, more options for that. And I'm gonna say just having one kerosene lantern is really not enough. There needs to be more in that kind of idea. So next up, and this is where I realized that I'm really working with an outdated version, it still has text chat on here. So that can be removed because that has been in the game for a while now. I had to take this off another older video in order to see where everything is at right now. So yeah, back in the day we didn't have text chat, and I hope I'm not repeating other stuff that has been taken care of ever since. I know the list has gotten a bit shorter in a while. There have been a few updates that addressed things, but they also had other things being re-added, so I might have to take another look once I'm back on the new PC, but this is what I can do right now. And for the most part, it's gonna be the same. Jesus Christ, that's awful to look at. So now we are talking about features. First up, a way to change details about the engines and cars after purchase. For example, if you want to apply the new DLC skin from the Montezuma to your starter engine. You can do that on PC by going to Railroad Studio, but there's no way to do that in-game. No way to change any numbers, any color scheme, any lighting options or anything on the engines unless you use that third-party tool, and console players don't even get that option. So yeah, that absolutely sucks and should be addressed, but yeah, people have been asking for that for a while. And the only answer that we've ever gotten from the devs was, can't do that, that's too much work. But yeah. Next one, selling engines and rolling stock. Right now we can delete them, but we get no money back for that. And there should be some way to sell it and just get back a fraction of the money that you paid for the stuff. But yeah, just deleting them is kinda cheap and weird. New cars and engines should have a specific area in which they spawn in. And this area should be movable by the player. So we have the old starter track over here for Pine Valley. And I think ideally it should just be two platforms in parallel with a bit of an area in between. And whatever track you place in between that area would be where the cars and engines can spawn in. It should also be a bit bigger than what we have right here. But not just have it spawn in randomly all over the place somewhere around the player. The way it's working and the way it has been working for a while now, it's just garbage. And having one area that the player can place down themselves and that consistently works would just be a lot more immersive and a lot more logical. Because you would expect to have a certain delivery area, usually right next to your main yard. Next one, add a third axis to the prop rotation. When it comes to props right now, we can basically, and this is a really bad one to show this with, let's go for this one right here. We can rotate it like this. We can also put it on the side like this, but I cannot rotate it towards me or away from me to tilt it that way, and that just sucks and should be taken care of. Lot of options that we are missing out on because that just isn't possible right now. So that axis should be there. Also, speaking of features for the props, we should be able to move them around without them having to lean on something else, because right now I can place it somewhere around here using other props or other vehicles, the ground and whatever. But I would really like to be able to place them maybe mid-air or something. Would be really useful when you try to build a custom roof or stuff like that, maybe a custom ramp. Because right now, if you want to do anything like that, you need to overlap things very much in order to make that work at all. Very significantly, and especially with stuff like this, in order to build a custom ramp, I'm basically needing to place down twice as many props as I want, because I cannot just put one to the end of the other. I can put the middle of the new prop to the end of the next one, and therefore yeah, I'm using up way more props than I would really want to. So stuff like that. Now we get to industries and economy. And this is another big one, should likely be further up in the list, but hey, it's an outdated one anyways. First up, and you know this is gonna be coming, fix industries so they don't overfill outputs and gain double output if for one good if the other output good is full. So if we have like a sawmill, and I'm gonna quickly spawn one in over here. The sawmill famously has two goods on the output side, beams and lumber. And in the past it used to be the case if you fill up, let's start by this. Every time you unload one log on the input side, you would get one lumber and one beam on the output side. I'm not gonna get into the whole difficulty setting, but yeah, this is basically the idea. And yeah, if one of those outputs is full, for the longest time in the past, it would mean that you get double the other output goods, so that for, let's say for 30 logs that you may be unloading here, you still get 60 items in total. Might not be 30 of each, maybe it's 15 of one, 45 of the other, but it's gonna work out to the same amount regardless of what is full, and that doesn't happen anymore. Same with the iron mine, it's basically every time you have at least one unit free in the output, it's gonna try to make more stuff even though it should come in at batches of 5. So if you only have one unit or capacity for one more unit of for one more unit of iron ore in the mine, because you're just loading a car, you're just gonna get one more produced and therefore missing out on the 4 other ones. It sucks, it's wasteful, it's very inconsistent and should have been addressed a while ago. Anyways, let me scroll down a bit. Next one, balance the fuel economy, both for consumption rates as well as making sure the facilities make sense. For example, the wood rig, it just auto-generates firewood, and therefore, why do we need to take care of getting the firewood facility, which needs input in order to make any more firewood? Would be much more sensible if this was only an area where we can store firewood, but we would actually need to bring it over from the firewood facility. So use this one to create firewood from any of these other cargo types. Take that into one car that can actually hold a lot of it and load and unload it quickly. And then put it into these things that you can place all around the map without needing much structure for it. But yeah, we don't have anything like that. Basically, the wood rig, if you choose to use it, you are not really needing any firewood depots anymore, because this thing will slowly just automatically generate the stuff, just as it's doing right now. And there could be a whole nother layer to this game if this was actually addressed and taken into account. Yeah, the next thing, and this is something that actually has been addressed a while ago, and that's payout changes. Has been taken care of with the last update, and I'm really happy about it. So this is once again off the list, but I don't mind praising the devs for that again, because they've done a really good job at readjusting the payouts to make things make more sense. Next thing, however, would be an in-depth economy. And I mean things like paying for the text that you lay out, and possibly also paying for the items that you load and then get paid better for when you unload them. Possibly also having to pay a fine if you lose stuff on the way. So if you derail, your cargo is lost, and yeah, you're gonna have to pay the industries because you basically just wasted whatever they produced for you to bring to another place. The ability to take out a loan if you need to in order to keep running and that kind of thing. Could be an optional different mode compared to maybe also a more sandboxy mode where you don't need to pay for anything and can just buy whatever you want from the get-go. But yeah, it should really be in there because that would be a whole nother thing to add longevity to the game. Possibly also being able to eventually own the industries and being able to upgrade them. Although that's a more far-fetched thing. But I think just a slightly more in-depth economy that has more things going on than paying for engines and cars, that's not really too much to ask for. Next one, combined unloading platforms should not delete supplies that end up on the wrong part of a platform. So if we have, for example, the gold mine, everything except for the coal goes onto the same set of platforms, but if I put the beams a bit too far onto this one, it's just gonna get deleted. It's not gonna enter the industry. I'm not gonna get paid for that. Same for the rails and the tools. I actually used to take wood rakes and put them in between the platforms as dividers, so I know where each platform ends and how far I can put anything into one direction. But really, it should just be accepting all these goods all across the platform and not give me any trouble for it. So yeah, that's it for industries and economy. The last one has to do with menus. And there are actually a few things that I need to take off this list because they have been taken care of in the last update. First one, change gameplay menus so that we can combine custom day and night length with dynamic weather again. Been taken care of, thankfully, so we can do that now. It also finally saves the dynamic weather settings, so that's pretty cool. Better menus, we have gotten those. So we now don't have drop-down lists anymore, and it's easier to buy engines and that kind of thing. We can even buy multiple ones, even though there's still a problem with that, and I'm gonna be writing out that right now, because buying multiple cars, it's not amazing, because even if you don't want any numbers on it, if you buy multiple, the second one is gonna get a number and it's gonna start counting from there. Buying multiple cars should not add numbers when there aren't any to begin with. It's cool that it can count up automatically, but as it is implemented right now, you're always gonna end up with numbers, and remember, there's nothing in this game that lets you remove them apart from deleting the entire car and buying it again. And that sucks. Next up, track laying quality of life buttons to invert the radius or turn it straight in circle mode. Also, it needs to remember the grade. I can quickly test the last thing because this has been a major issue for a while now. So if you're building a long grade and you need to use multiple different types of track, it's really hard keeping that all consistent. So if I go back in here now and I'm maybe choosing one with higher banking, it kept the grade in mind, but if I'm now closing the entire menu with right click and I'm now going over to a bridge, let's see. Yeah, now it's back down to 0% and this is not amazing. So it keeps the grade if you go straight back into the menu, but if you do as little as right click, you are going to have to set up the grade again. And there is no good way to really tell what the grade of the last piece was. So that's a problem. And last but not least, separate the deletion section for industries. It should not be part of all. Right now, industries are being counted as facilities. So if I go to facilities, I can get rid of my slaughterhouse over here. I can get rid of all the other stuff around here. And that's just not a good thing, because you're basically one left click away from a catastrophe. Especially if you are trying to do some fine adjustment on stuff around here and need to take care of both banking and also facilities, regular track, that kind of thing. It's too tempting to just go to all and work with that. And if you then right click out of it, you cannot even undo it anymore. So in my opinion, industries should be their own point, and it should not be part of all here. Because that's really more for stuff that you're doing while playing, and in my opinion, industry placement is usually something more in preparation for a playthrough. You are basically in a different mindset when you're doing that, and yeah, shouldn't be accidentally getting rid of all the stuff that you don't want to have removed. But yeah, so far so good. So much about all the stuff that has been on the list. Again, there are a few things that I can finally take off, and I'm glad that they are also taking care of some of the more critical bugs, like when it comes to running trains and random derailments. Some things I just have to put in brackets and see if they are going to improve it really and if it's actually been fixed, because some things just require testing. And yeah, with some of the bugs in the past, they said they fixed them, and then everything was still the same as before. So yeah, I'm a bit careful when taking their word on this kind of stuff, because they may have tried something and it may have just not worked properly. Anyways, that's the list as of today with version 1.0. Still a lot left to be desired, but once again, I think just looking at what the game was like before this update and where it is right now, I think we are in a better place. Also, they finally took care of the cars being frozen in place, so that was something added with the last update, where if you bump into a car and that has been standing there even without any brakes, it just would act as if it was a rock, completely immovable. And I'm glad they took care of that and finally got that sorted out, because that was another major pain to deal with. So yeah, step in the right direction. I can't say that I'm really loving this as version 1.0. If they keep making updates, this could be going into a good place. But right now, if they at least fix the stuff with the industry wasting resources and also give us the option to respec the engines in game, I think it would be good enough to be enjoyable. But as it is, there are still major issues and they need to be taken care of. Anyways, that's it for me for this one. Thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments. And until the next time, have a good one. Till then, bye bye.